Thank you so much for joining again for a regular reading calls. We have a very special guest, and Yamuna Jivan Prabhu has been joining us since the very beginning for all our classes. He came to bless us and guide us at the very beginning of our reading, starting this reading, and at the end of every chapter to help us clarify all the doubts that we have. So I'm pretty sure every one of us by now know Yamuna Jivan Prabhu, but still I will introduce him once again. So Yamuna Jivan Prabhu was first introduced to the Vedic philosophical teaching and the Bhagavad Gita in his youth in Nigeria and then later in Spain. In addition to his day job as an engineering director, he's an experienced spiritual educator and has spent the last 20 years serving in leadership roles in St. Louis and Chicago temples, as well as reaching out to college students to share ancient practices of Bhakti Yoga at Washington University in St. Louis, Northwestern, and other universities in the Midwest area. As a trained mediator and chaplain, he also volunteers his time to provide pastoral care to the broader community in conflict resolution, life crisis, and grief counseling. Passionate about healthy relationships and improved leadership, he and his wife have recently started offering courses through TACEL, the Atma Center for Empathetic Leadership. Thank you so much, Prabhu. We are always very, very happy to hear from you. We are very grateful for you to always make time for all of us to come and speak with us. Over to you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. In the Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter, it is said, Tushanti cha ramanti cha, that bodhayanta parasparam. When we speak of these topics of the Bhagavad Gita and Krishna consciousness in general, that the heart becomes joyful and happy, Tushanti and ramanti, that it becomes satisfied. There's a contentment. The hole in the heart is filled. So I am the beneficiary, is my point. And I am grateful to both of you to invite me consistently to be part of this Sangha. It gives me great joy, and it's enriching for myself as well. So with that, I'll start the invocation mantras. The first two and the last three mantras of the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, you can follow along if you have the book with you. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunlitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, with the blessings of the great teachers of the past and recognizing the limitations of my own capacity to receive transcendental wisdom that's very deep, I will attempt to present a quick summary on chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita that's entitled Karma Yoga. Chapter 3 has 43 verses. It is very rich. I mean, super rich in instructions and verses that guide us in our practical day-to-day life. So it would be very difficult, obviously, with each of these sessions to summarize such rich content in a short amount of time. Regardless, I will attempt. Let me share my screen here. Screen. Okay. I don't have the option to share. What is that?
I think you should go. I have not better host control in this meeting.
Yeah, it's not giving the option. Okay, I got it. I'm good. Okay. So that's what it's sharing right now. All right. Okay. Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, Karma Yoga. So in the very first two verses, Arjuna presents a dilemma. Krishna has, in chapter 2, he's explained to Arjuna the difference between the body and the soul. He explains to Arjuna the concept of Buddhi Yoga, that if you put the world on pause and try to analyze and distinguish what are the various elements that make up this world, that is called Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya literally means to count, so you're counting the different aspects of the universe. He does that, and then he presses the play button. If you press the play button for life in general, how should one live with that understanding of the distinction between the soul and and matter, the body? So he presents this idea of Buddhi Yoga, the yoga of intelligence, or the yoga of acting and spiritual knowledge, Buddhi Yoga. And so he's encouraging Arjuna, act in Buddhi Yoga, act in Buddhi Yoga. And he concludes chapter 2, Arjuna, continue your duty and fight. Arjuna, at this point, he's confused. And so he asks Krishna, and he thinks there's an apparent contradiction. Let me show you the verse. In the very first verse, he says, O Janardana, okay, Shiva, why do you engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? So if you look at the words used in the Sanskrit, he uses the word buddhir, mata buddhir, him karmani ghorema. Why are you asking me to do this ghastly work? Which, by the way, the word ghore here means ghastly, which in English is similar to gory. So you'll see a lot of similarities between Sanskrit and English, actually. You see how English can be derived from Sanskrit. There are a number of words like that, including this one, gore. And Arjuna is saying, you're telling me to fight and you're telling me to act with intelligence. For him to act with intelligence, it means to be renounced. So he's confused. And he's telling Arjuna, Krishna, why are you confusing me? And so the very next verse, he presents this. He says, my intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. He's kind of blaming Krishna for being contradictory. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. We find that Arjuna is apparently a soul surrendered at this point. He tells Krishna in text 7 of chapter 2 that I'm a soul surrendered unto you. Shishyasteham shadi mam tvam prapannam. I'm ready to do as you say. I'm a soul surrendered unto you. However, we recognize here that Arjuna's depth of surrender at this point in the Bhagavad Gita is not that strong. So he's saying I'm surrendered, but he's not really surrendered because Krishna told him to fight and he's not ready to fight. He has his preconceptions of what he should do in his life, and so he's confused. It is common to see spiritual instructions in a superficial manner. So it is common to also see things being contradictory. Like in this case, should he leave the battlefield or should he continue? What Krishna was trying to encourage him to do is to get deeper about what yoga means. And he wasn't able to do that. So Arjuna had this conundrum coming into the beginning of chapter 2. Should I fight or should I leave the battle and engage in intelligence, meaning study the scriptures and just be peaceful, renounce the world? He understood that to be Buddhi Yoga. He didn't understand what Krishna was trying to explain to him earlier, that that you do your duty and your Buddhi Yoga is the conception with which you do your duty, the heart with which you do your duty, the internal consciousness with which you do your duty. Krishna was trying to adjust that for him. He saw the instruction as an external behavior, not as an internal consciousness shift, which is a common phenomena for spiritualists who are just starting down the path. It is a common phenomenon that we don't get it. We just don't get the message. And here, even Arjuna, the great warrior and friend of Krishna, doesn't get it. Yet, Arjuna's beautiful quality is that he doesn't just assume what Krishna meant and try to go and apply it. Rather, he asks the question. He's making the attempt to clarify his understanding, which is absolutely to his credit. It is the nature of the spiritual student to ask questions, and Arjuna is asking that question because he is slightly confused. And also, we will see that in Krishna's response, he doesn't immediately blame Arjuna. Hey, I explained this, you didn't get it. Krishna doesn't sit on a high horse judging Arjuna. Krishna doesn't sit on a high horse rejecting Arjuna. He doesn't say, Arjuna, go figure this out. Go ask Gemini or something, or ChatGPT. Leave me alone. I mean, like, come on. I explained this in 72 verses in the previous chapter, and you still can get it. No, rather the relationship between Arjuna and Krishna is one of affection and commitment. Arjuna is committed to the relationship as a shishya, as a disciple, and Krishna is committed, as we see throughout the Bhagavad Gita, with love and affection as the teacher. So Krishna doesn't blame him, he doesn't shame him, he doesn't do any of that. He simply responds to help Arjuna understand that actually it's not a contradiction, it's all on the same path. So that comes to our second part, where Krishna explains that one is Sankhya Yoga and the other is Buddhi Yoga. Both Sankhya Yoga and Buddhi Yoga are actually both parts of the same yoga process. Let me stop sharing. So they're both part of the same yoga process. And it is impossible for you, Arjuna, or for anyone to just be inactive and engage in Buddhi Yoga as if you have nothing to do. Krishna emphasizes that nahi kachchit shanamapi, not even a moment can you go on without acting. So he explains that the material modes of nature force all living beings into constant activity. And then towards the end of this section, in the section being verses 3 to 9, Krishna says, because you cannot stop activity, do your activity, but do it as a sacrifice. And here he introduces the word yagya. This word yagya is introduced in chapter 3, it's talked about in chapter 3, and it's expanded in great detail in chapter 4. In yagya, we all understand it to be like a fire sacrifice or something like that. But really, the essence of yagya means selflessness. That's the essence of yagya, sacrifice. Something that is not necessarily easy for you to do. It's not something that is your natural inclination, but you're going above and beyond. You're going past your comfort zone into a stretch zone or a stress zone even sometimes. So that's the idea of yagya. Yagya, in its essence, means selflessness. Like a mother will sacrifice for a child, or the teacher will sacrifice for the student, or the friend will sacrifice for the friend something. They may give their car or their money or something. Sacrifice is selflessness. You're giving something that's not comfortable, but you do it because there's a higher purpose. So what Krishna is telling Arjuna, it's not comfortable at all to fight against your family. your teachers, your grandfather, it's so difficult. But transform that action, that it's your duty. Do it as a sacrifice. And that selflessness is directed towards a person, directed towards the supreme Vishnu, God. That will now absolve you or remove you from the pain of reaction of your work. So this is the sum and substance of chapter 3, is to engage in yajna, sacrificial, unselfish action. Then Krishna explains how to do these sacrifices. So he explains that in text 10, how the starting of mankind in this world, with the ushering of mankind came instructions of how to do sacrifice, given by Lord Brahma and other demigods. And then if you engage in sacrifice, it brings rain. And once rain comes, it produces food grains. And when there's food grains, annad bhavanti bhutani, and when there's food grains, it sustains all living entities. So actually, through the process of sacrifice, subsistence and being able to just survive in the world happens. There's an interesting story. One time, Srila Prabhupada in Hyderabad had come, and there was a drought for many, many weeks in Andhra Pradesh at the time. And some persons came up to Prabhupada expressing their deep frustration and sadness around how there isn't harvest, there isn't grains, crops are dying, and there's no rain. And so Prabhupada told the devotees, just chant Hare Krishna as a sacrifice. And for this particular age, the best sacrifice is the sacrifice of Harinam Sankirtan. So together chanting the holy name of the Lord is a very powerful sacrifice that invites the blessings of the demigods and the cosmic controllers of the world. So the devotees did that. They just went out on the streets and chanted Harinam, and there was a gush of rain that came down. One might say, well, that might have just been coincidence. It could have been just coincidence. But the fact that they went weeks without rain, and all of a sudden, because they did the Harinam the very next day, that there was ushering of great rain, probably not a coincidence. And then within the section, a very powerful message in text 13 is this thing about offering our food to God. So in text 13, the message that is given is Yagya Shishtashino Santo Muchante Sarvakil Bishay. That one should offer one's food to God, because if not, with every mouthful, you're eating sin. That's how it's discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. So enjoying nature's gifts, including food or whatever else, and not offering it back to the source, Bhagavad Gita says that one becomes a spiritual thief. Then moving on to text 17 and to 24, what Arjuna is trying to say is that he would just like to quit the battlefield. That's his proclivity. That's his inclination at this point. He wants a cop out. And Krishna, in explaining to him how to engage in proper karma yoga or buddhi yoga, he's explained to him there is a time and place, and there is a possibility of simply avoiding your work. You can escape the battlefield. However, that requires qualification. So in text 17, he explains those who find happiness within, those who are connected with God in a very special, intimate way, those persons, they have no duties to do. They're not dependent on other living entities. For them, they can just chill. They don't have to engage in any activity. However, Even such souls, Krishna says, even those souls, they act because now they um, uh, set an example for others. And he gives the example of King Janak, and then Krishna gives himself as an example, saying that I don't have anything to do. I'm the Supreme Lord. I have no obligation to anyone in this material world. But I too set an example, because if I didn't, then others would act similarly. They would follow me, and the whole society would be ruined. So it's so important. Even if Arjuna, even if you were self-realized, you should do your duty as a Kshatriya to be an example to others. Because Krishna explains one of the most famous verses on leadership here. He says, Yad yad achariti shreshtas tat tad eveta rojana sayat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. That those who are natural leaders, based on how they act, others will follow. Therefore, you have to be very careful if you're a leader, and Arjuna was certainly a leader. Be very careful how you behave, because that is how others will follow. As a parent, we have to be careful because we're a leader for souls in our care as children. As a leader of a community, there's some leaders in this reading group. So whoever the leaders are, need to be very aware that they're setting the example by their own conduct. So that's Krishna's message there in the section of 17 to 24. Then moving on to section 25 to 35. Krishna makes the powerful point in one of the most famous verses where he says, Prakriti kriyamanani gune karmani sarvashah ahankar vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. That most people, as you put on your glasses of Shastra Chakshusha, if you put on these glasses of scriptural knowledge and you see the world around you, or even see yourself, you'll see that everyone is thinking they're the doer, when in reality, the modes of nature are acting, and they're simply being driven, like as of sitting in a machine of Prakriti, sitting in a machine of the modes of nature, and being driven to action. So Krishna says, people think they're making the results of the activity. They think they're influencing others. They think they're the ones, quote, making money or causing distress or getting great achievements, but that's all false. Vimudhatma, completely foolish, and it's sad. Mudha means ass. Vimudha means a very special ass, a very special donkey, or a person who is completely foolish. So then Krishna tells Arjuna, those who are tattvavit, those who are knowers of the truth, they continue to do their duties. They understand they're in an awkward position of being in material body, even though they're spiritual in nature, but they act and know that they're not acting. There's higher forces that's guiding their activity. And towards the end of the section, Krishna makes a strong statement, which he repeats twice in the Bhagavad Gita. Text 35, as well as chapter 18, text 47. Those two verses are the only two verses. I'm sorry, those two verses are one of two different verses that are repeated twice in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. So that's in chapter 18. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. He says that in chapter 18, he says in chapter 9. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. So if Krishna has repeated something, it's really important, which means always think of me, worship me, offer your homage unto me, become my devotee. Very important is the essence message of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna repeats twice. What is the other verse that Krishna repeats twice in the Bhagavad Gita? It is this one, text 35, where Krishna says, Shreyan Swadharma Viguna Paradharmat Swanushtita. He repeats it in the 3rd chapter and in the 18th chapter. And Krishna says that it's better, far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. So you do what is meant for you in your position. Arjuna, you are meant to fight as a Kshatriya. Some of us are meant to be householders. Some of us are meant to be Vaishyas or Shudras. We do our duty according to our personality, according to the modes of nature that we have acquired. Don't try to do somebody else's duty. Understand the uniqueness of your personality and be comfortable with it. Don't compare yourself with others. Don't try to do somebody else's duty, and know that whatever you do, even though it's faulty, even though, like, just like every time you have fire, there is smoke. Krishna says you will make mistakes in whatever you do. You will make mistakes. You will have faults in what you do. Don't worry. Do what is according to your nature. Don't try to do something else. And that is best. That's the other repeated message of Bhagavad Gita, how important that is. Then finally, in the last section, Arjuna asked the question, Krishna, sometimes I know what I should do, but I don't do it. And I know what I shouldn't do, yet I do it. And I can, probably all of us on this call feel and can relate with that we just don't live up to our own expectations of ourselves or desires of how we would like to live life, and we're not fulfilling them. And we have this sinking of the heart where we feel, oh, why can't I just be more disciplined in my life? Why can't I just be more regulated? So Arjuna, the great warrior, the greatest warrior, himself is expressing this weakness. And so he says, what is it, Krishna, that makes me act that way? And Krishna says, Kamesha Krodesha Rajaguna Samudbhava. It is this lust or material desire that then it transforms into anger, that is covers the spiritual being, and it makes them behave in ways that they really don't want to ultimately behave. And it's the greatest enemy. 3 times in this section, text 33 to 43, Krishna says the greatest enemy of the soul is lust or kama or material desire. And so Krishna then concludes this section, says, okay, what do you do about this lust thing? How do you handle it? Evam buddhe param buddha samstya bhatmanam atmana. That you try to control this lust or material desire with deliberate spiritual intelligence, and by that you will attain spiritual realization. So now, what is that? Where do I find myself here? So what is that spiritual intelligence by which you can control the mind and control lust? What is that spiritual intelligence? That buddhi, evam buddhe param buddha, that buddhi is now explained in chapter 4. In chapter 4, Krishna explains you get that buddhi from parampara, from a disciplic succession, and then through the relationship with a guru in the parampara or gurus in the parampara, one can control this powerful enemy called lust. Okay, so I'll pause there and see if there are any comments or questions, reflections, messages that particularly resonated for you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for summarizing so well. It was nice deliberation on different aspects in very nice summary. And Yeah, it was very. I mean, especially I liked how you broke down into chunks, so each of them was very easy to relate. I had one thought which I was thinking about. Like, we understand the other message in the Gita, which is Manmana Bhavat Bhakto, and that is repeated twice because definitely Krishna wants to emphasize the point of ultimately meditating on him and developing love for him. So, what are your thoughts on what could be the reason Krishna repeated this message also twice? Once here and of course while summarizing later as well. So of course it is essential for Arjuna because he has to do his particular duty. But he was trying to do any some other person's duty. But in general context, how do you understand this message?
The question being, why would Krishna emphasize this particular message among all of the messages in Bhagavad Gita, explain it, say it twice?
Yeah.
At the core of spiritual growth is the practice of bhakti. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. That's at the core. It's a essential part of life, essential part of bhakti yoga, of yoga in general. So Krishna is giving that essence, and he says, you do that and you will attain me. I promise you. While that is the case, we are currently in a material body. So from the swadharma of the soul, manmana bhava madbhakto, become my devotee, worship me, and always think of me. That's the swadharma of the soul. Fine. The thing is that we at this present moment, with material bodies, with families, with jobs, with duties of life that we interact with the rest of the world, we cannot just do that. Or I would say that gives you an internal compass, but it doesn't say, okay, how do you interact with the rest of the world? How do you live in this body that you have currently? So the guidance for that is this Shreyan Swadharma Vigunam Paradharma Sanushtita. That while you are in this material world and have a material body, understand what is your nature, understand what is your personality, understand what are your gunas and doshas. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains like this. Your particular makeup, understand what are your strengths and your weaknesses. That's your swadharma on the bodily level, on the bodily and the mental level. What are your strengths? So doing, having someone to help you understand your personality, doing personality assessments, tests, so many things that can help you understand your personality. And now you engage in your unique way in the world. Paradharmat sanushtita. It's way better to act according to your personality than trying to do what somebody else does. So Krishna is encouraging, don't imitate other people. Don't compare yourself with other people because you're unique. A lot of trouble in this world of how we don't live peacefully is because we compare ourselves with others. We're not focused on just our own strengths and weaknesses and how we can grow and live peacefully. We're comparing and thinking, social media makes us go crazy. Going through LinkedIn, oh man, look at me, I'm not really making much progress in my life. Or seeing how people are posting on Instagram, they're having fun in this vacation, that vacation, and I'm not having fun, right? So there's constant comparison going on, constant judging going on of ourselves and of others. Krishna says, find the uniqueness about you, serve in that way, don't try to do somebody else's duty, and know that mistakes will be there. So he says that there will be mistakes, no doubt, in this repeated verse. There will be mistakes. So being accepting of yourself, and therefore, if you're accepting of yourself, you'll be accepting of others. It's such a critical, pivotal point in one's journey in spirituality to be self-accepting and accepting of others. So while Manmana Bhavama Bhakto is a core spiritual practice, how we deal with our conditioning, this repeated verse of Shreyan Swadharma Vigunat really gives us a lot of guidance of how to live in this world peacefully, so we can practice Manmana Bhavama Bhakto nicely. That's some of my reflections on this at this time.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you so much. I mean, it is very important in today's day and age to be honest with ourselves and being genuine in what our actual, as you mentioned, our understanding ourselves clearly and engaging accordingly. So that way we can be satisfied and we can actually make the best contribution in this world.
Mm.
Otherwise, if we just try to imitate or yeah, that just creates false expectation for ourselves. We are not satisfied and we cannot do much good also in this. So thank you so much.
Any other comments? Shall we
Hare
go
Krishna,
around?
Prabhu.
Maybe? Yeah.
I was just thinking about what we discussed today, and I don't have the question framed in my head perfectly, but I was just contemplating. So, part of us, when we follow someone, because you said that it was a very important verse as part of the third chapter, Yati Yata Charati Shrishta. And as the theme of that section is that how those who are being leaders, they have a great responsibility. While we look at leaders with that sense of responsibility, we do also understand that we are trying to do comparison at a certain level. We acknowledge my current position, I acknowledge their position, and then I'm trying to go beyond my comfort zone in order to grow to that position. Now, I was just contemplating on this that when I'm in that stretch zone, where do I understand that this is my limitation or there is still more fuel that I can use to push? Because that's the point that you just said that we acknowledge our own understanding, our strengths, our weaknesses. I don't know if that makes sense.
Let me see if I'll rephrase the question and see if I've understood. That in the attempt of following a leader, or maybe even being a leader ourselves, there may be times when we are moving from our comfort zone to our stretch zone. And where do we know the limits of how much to stretch? Because we don't want to enter into the zone after that, which is a stress zone, because entering the stress zone is not helpful for us or others. So how to know where that line is, where I should not go past from stretch to stress? Is that the question?
Yeah.
So typically it doesn't, we don't we don't know it until we actually get into the stress zone. And so it's kind of like trial and error to know what our capacity is to some degree. The symptoms that we're in a stress zone is that we're very snappy and irritable. Another symptom that we're in the stress zone is that we might enter into intense emotions, either anger or depression or something like that. Another symptom that we're in the stress zone is that those who are near and dear to us, we tend to have very less patience with them. So to know that I am getting into my stress zone and I want to stay in my stress zone, we can watch the mind. So in the 6th chapter of the 5th canto, it is discussed that Shukadeva Goswami explains that those who are yogis are very, very careful to watch their minds. Because just like a wild animal Even though tamed, a wild animal is constantly watched by the tamer to know that anytime that wild animal will go cuckoo, like that, the yogi constantly watches the movements of the mind. So, in this context of the question, to watch as our emotions become intense or become more negative than we're comfortable with, to know I am now moving into my stress zone. Often, what's helpful is journaling. As our emotions rise, anger, sadness, loss, feel grief, that we start to journal about these emotions, we get a better sense of what goes on for me, to what degree I can actually stretch myself. The other thing is that we can have a guide to help us, along with our own watching our mind, to have someone to share with us their perception of whether we are in the stress zone or a stretch zone. So having some kind of coach is always helpful in these kind of things, where we can talk about the particulars about our life and the specific situations we're dealing with. And very important in all of this, I was just watching a seminar on it, on that we each have certain areas that we are really good at. Some things give us energy and some things drain our energy. At a very basic level, some are extroverts and some are introverts. And the extroverts, for them, when they're with people and they're interacting with people, it gives them energy. It's not a stretch for them. I mean, it's not a stress for them. For introverts, they drain energy when they're interacting with people. That's at a basic level to understand what gives us energy and drains us energy. And then there are more nuanced understandings. For some people, ideation gives them a lot of energy, and they can do it 16 hours a day, and they're not in the stress zone. For some people, just being tenacious about something or just trying to be organized drains them. Just trying to organize their life or clean drains them. For some people, cleaning gives them energy. For some people, cleaning drains their energy. So to be aware, what is it that gives us energy, what drains our energy, and then accordingly balancing, because we can't always do what gives us energy, balancing our life in a regulated way, to ensure that things that give us energy are certainly part of our life, so that we don't enter into a stress zone. Doing things that we really enjoy doing, that gives us energy, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Prabhu. Thank you so much. It was very important to like. It's. I think those are some very important points on observing our own self and learning about our own self as we go through the journey.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else on the call that would like to share something that you're taking away from this discussion today? Any takeaways?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hey, Krishna.
So the people who are introverts, so if they want to if they want to mix with the people, and if that drains their energy, so how they can mix with the people?
So you can't completely stay in isolation typically, right? It's difficult to do that. We're social beings. Ultimately, we are social beings. Even at the core, as spiritual beings, we are social beings. In the spiritual world, when we go back to Krishna, it's not that it's just us and Krishna. We're actually in a community of many souls serving Krishna. At the same time, understanding that I have introverted nature, meaning, social interactions sort of drain my energy. We can't fully avoid it. So making sure that some part of my day, I have what we call quiet time. So for example, I'll tell my kids, now's my quiet time. You know, they sent my kid was texting me repeatedly about an hour ago, and then I wrote back to him and I said, "This is my quiet time." And so he said, "Okay, my bad, sorry." So we each need to create a little boundary for ourselves called quiet time or introspective time or alone time. And those are introverts. If they give themselves enough quiet time that's good for them in the day, then it's a time management thing. Then they can spend, a few hours or a few minutes or whatever the capacity is interacting with others. And while it'll drain your energy, you can go back to your quiet time. So then the introverts are not so um, stressed out by the social interactions. I don't know if that answered your question.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Any other takeaways? Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Uh, yeah, I just had these reflections that I'm trying to stop comparing myself with others, and that gives me more peace when I focus on my work and bettering uh, what I did yesterday and comparing myself to myself. But I also get uncomfortable now when people are comparing themselves against me, and then I don't know, I'm unsure like how to react. So just some reflection.
Sure. Yeah. One thing that I would do if I receive that kind of energy where someone's trying to compare themselves to me, um, if I have a relationship with them where I can say something, I'll probably say, we all each have our own journeys, and it's very unique. And where we came from is very unique, and where we're going to is very unique and very different from each other. So if I have the relationship with that person, I would offer those words. And if I don't have a relationship where they would hear it with grace, then I would simply think in my mind and pray to Krishna. I hope for them to be released from this own pressure they're putting on themselves to compare themselves with me, because that's not helpful for anyone. So a little prayer in our heart to Krishna and say, Krishna, please help this soul not compare, because it's not helpful.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I think I'll probably think this way too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All right. Okay, shall we end? Sounds like this. Good.
So, thank you so much for coming and speaking with all of us, helping us clear our doubts, giving us a capsuled dose of the ge- every chapter that we can swallow it as a easy pill and try to remember it, and helping us
Mhm.
make connections as we keep moving ahead. Thank you so much for your time and
Thank
always
you.
being there for all of us. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Thank you
Take care.
everyone for joining the
Hare
call
Krishna.
today.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.